I'm Joeita, and this is The Pulse. The blind community has always enjoyed an interesting relationship with film. Many blind people enjoy going to the theater and watching films, even if they can't see the screen. Before Described Video came along, many blind audience members would rely on dialogue, context clues, and even the narration of sighted companions to fill in the gaps. Speaking of gaps, blind audience members might also observe a gap in the representation of blind people on screen, or the lack of positive representation. The camera, however, provides a lens onto the world. For the blind filmmaker, blindness allows them to see differently and tell stories that have, up to this point, remained untold, by turning the camera back on blindness itself. Today, we discuss blindness, the gaze, and filmmaking. It's time to put your finger on the pulse. Hello and welcome back to The Pulse on AMI Audio. I'm Joeita, and I'm glad you're joining me today for the second of a two-part series dealing with disability and filmmaking. I hope you found the conversation we had last week with Ophira Khalif about the new program for gender marginalized disabled screenwriters to be of some use. And if that's a program that you feel you'd be interested in, or if you are qualified for, I hope you'll put in your application. Remember, the deadline to apply is July 22nd, and you can always go back and listen to our conversation if you'd like to get some more information about Ophira Khalif and the program about the screenwriters for gender diverse people with disabilities. I'm joined today by James Rath, who is visually impaired. He is a filmmaker, content creator, accessibility advocate, and also hosts a TV show. So James is someone who clearly wears many hats, and I'm delighted he could join us today to talk about his journey as a blind filmmaker. James, hello, and welcome to The Pulse. I'm really glad you could join us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
How does someone who is blind pick up a camera and make films? How does that become their life's work?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was born with a congenital ocular condition, ocular albinism, which also triggered nystagmus and astigmatism. And my vision has always naturally been here in the U.S. what is considered legally blind, and it's kind of progressed a little bit worse in my adulthood. So I found a camera in my parents' basement, and I was about 8 years old. I just knew it was used for special occasions, and I'm not supposed to touch this. So my childlike wonder and curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to turn it on, look through the black and white viewfinder, and despite the color, because it was recording on like small VHSs back then, I could see detail that I didn't know was around me, that there was detail in the world around me when I was zooming into just like the shelves, the books, the toys. It fascinated me. And I always loved like storytelling as a kid. I was always into drawing. My face was literally like an inch from, the illustrations I was doing, or I had, what some folks I think refer to as like a CCTV, where it's like a tray and you can draw on it, and then a big monitor blows it up with a little camera that's from a top-down view, and that's how I would do a lot of my little comics as a kid. But that creativity spun out into a new kind of storytelling and medium, and that was filmmaking. And I did have some family friends who were in the Hollywood industry through my dad, and his childhood friends like worked on Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and Chronicles of Narnia, so movies that like I liked as a kid, and that really I think did help drive a little bit more of a push for me to want to learn more about movie making as a kid. And yeah, YouTube emerged around the same time, just within a couple of years, and that's what really I think accelerated all that.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the YouTube, because for a lot of content creators, I mean, now YouTube is a whole other beast. I think it's become very corporate, and the people who are successful have a lot of backing behind them. But when it was getting started, it really was a platform for many people who would otherwise not have had access to the media or to the more conventional forms of expression, whether it's getting on a radio or, having a TV show. It really gave a platform for those people. Did you feel that YouTube was in a similar fashion an opportunity for you to tell the stories that you had inside you that you had really wanted to share and to create some kind of a community with other people who might be interested?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel, it's been open since 2006, before the YouTube Google merger even fully went through, and I was about 10 years old at the time, so I really saw something in being able to broadcast yourself, which was their tagline back then. I'm not sure if they still use it today, but it really kind of resonated with me as a kid, because I was making stuff, but on these little VHS tapes, and I didn't know where to put it or how to like get it out there. And so I started just like uploading a few things I made with friends, no views or anything. It was just kind of a place, like, a few people saw it. But then I experimented with like just different genres of video growing up into middle school and high school, making like scripted short films. And eventually that evolved into like finding community when someone asked why my eyes were shaking as a result of the nystagmus in a video where I was just talking. And yeah, I just openly, casually said, oh yeah, I'm got a visual impairment, and more questions sort of stem from that. And then people who also had nystagmus or other ocular conditions like retinitis pigmentosus, who didn't really have representation on YouTube. This is like the 2013, 2015 era. Started commenting, just, it started building community. And then I started making more videos about growing up with low vision or legal blindness, and that experience, and then going into adulthood, because I was transitioning from graduating high school in 2014 to, okay, I just moved out to California 3 days after graduation in LA, and I'm trying to figure this out, trying to figure out how to take public transit on my own. I've never been offered a white cane, but wow, this thing is actually very useful for me, and helps me navigate, and I have no depth perception. So I'm just like documenting and vlogging these experiences, and that's sort of where that started to really grow. And these aren't stories that you often see in traditional media. And if you do see a blind person in traditional media, more than likely, especially in the past, it's someone pretending, acting to be blind. And sometimes it can just be a punchline for a joke. And it's not the most, it doesn't always leave the best impression for a blind audience member, which, we're very much watching.
I'm curious though about the technique, because whenever I've tried to handle a camcorder, or even if I tried to take pictures, I would become very self-conscious about whether I was doing it quote unquote right. Whether everything was at an angle and I hadn't realized, or if I was taking a photograph, did I splice the top of somebody's head off without meaning to? How did you, if you don't mind getting a little technical, how did you actually go about learning to use a camera and creating video? And I'm sure now you can also edit your videos. So how do you do all of that as someone who's blind?
Yeah. So there are many roles in the filmmaking process, and especially when you're creating content on your own, obviously you're then wearing many hats and taking on many of these roles. And growing up, like, I always liked the direction. I had a vision in my head for what I want this to look like, and you storyboard it a little bit if you're making like a short film with friends, and then you get help me with the framing. But if it was just me setting up the camera, I might need a little extra time to do it. But I do have like at least 5 to 10% of remaining vision for really just reference of composition, color. Sure, there's not much detail in it, but that's where the viewfinder can help within like very up close, can help me a little bit. So I do know there's a challenge certainly with a visual medium for many folks with various different ocular conditions. And luckily, even today, there's more technology out there now that's helping to address this, whether it's using something like a smartphone, which have fantastic cameras, by the way. Like, what you got in like your pocket now is so much better than what I even had in high school. And I was like buying some expensive cameras back then, like at least like decently decent digital cameras that could record HD and everything. And now they have software that is able to use like AI or along with a screen reader to tell you like, hey, there's one face, two face, they're smiling, or
Yes.
move back a little bit.
It's something for sure.
Yeah, and both Android and iOS offer this, which is great, and that's only going to improve and get better. But now we're also seeing camera companies. I worked with Sony, so like full disclosure, partnered with Sony for some content with this, but I am a strong believer in like the product that they did release. I love it, and it's become a part of my workflow. And like I said, I was always into directing. I never really identified as a videographer, which is the person who is kind of calling the video shots, holding the camera. Even when I would have to do it, I never wanted to tell people I'm a videographer. Please don't hire me to be a videographer. I was always a little bit more insecure, and I opened up about this in a video I made with in partnership with Sony. But they released a camera, which this won't work for everyone. This is like particular eye conditions, but it's worth trying it out at like a vision center that is offering it. But it's a laser projection viewfinder on this camera that isn't just like an LCD. It's projecting a small low frequency laser onto the retina. So it's bypassing a lot of the front optics that may be damaged or just be disruptive of viewing the image. And I can see clear HD when looking at this viewfinder. And it's baffling to me, but it's like, I feel like I can actually do cinematography now. I feel like I can actually like use this particular camera viewfinder and do videography, which is something that's really cool. And so the tech's only going to get better. Of course, you can learn like different kinds of lenses and the a lot of the math behind a 35 millimeter, how far away you need to be, what does your frame kind of look like if you're zoomed in, not zoomed in. But for the most part, I think the easiest place to start is like a smartphone and getting like a decent one from like more modern one that has up-to-date software, can use a screen reader with AI to help you with framing.
Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that you always like to tell stories and have an outlet for your creativity. Where do you draw your inspiration for all these stories?
Back in like high school, I used to do more like dramas, maybe a few like horror thrillers. And a lot of it came from like just shows I liked. I grew up with like, I grew up with, there's some comedies, there were some coming of age dramas. But I want to say like nowadays, I've been kind of making a return to YouTube after hosting a television show last year. And the kind of videos I've been wanting to tell are like, okay, I'm a person with blindness, but I'm going to kind of do this fun, unconventional challenge or thing that, you just wouldn't really think, put two and two together, but what kind of accessible result or outcome will come of it? Like, for example, I noticed a trend where people were like, I'm going to blindfold myself for 24 hours and figure out how to live. And it's just like, these people never really consulted or even talked to a blind person probably in their life. That's my assumption, of course. But a lot of the times it would be like, they don't know what to do all of a sudden. They're like, I don't know how to walk around. I don't know how to get to my fridge or make a meal. And then so I'm like, all right, yes, I got 5% of sight, but I'm going to blindfold myself and use all my O&M and my screen reader and tech skills. And I'm going to show you what it's like to just rely on my blind living skills for 24 hours and make it fun, make it comedic a little bit. So that, I even brought the blindfold in, I filmed in the shower, like little comedic moments like that to kind of like just soften the video. And I like to incorporate some like self-deprecating humor. I think for me, I've always had a little bit of like a humor side of my videos, but I felt like in the past I was a little bit, I could say even like mean sometimes to like a sighted person who's wondering but doesn't know how to maybe ask. And to me, it seems obvious with like how to ask a blind person such and such question, and it's almost maybe a little mockery. I don't think there's anything like too horrifically mean, but I felt like I didn't always have like the best intention with how I would answer some questions, or because it's like we hear it every day, right? So I wanted to sort of like I've matured a lot in the last few years, and I wanted to bring that along, and sure, I might try to have like some more self-deprecating, immature, humor of my own experience, but that's just because I think my little tagline I like to say is, like life and blindness, life isn't always got to be dark. It's a spectrum. And so I think today is like the types of things I draw inspiration from is I just want there to be better representation of people like me. And that can be through a various amount of genres on YouTube, whether it's tech travel vlog, but I like to incorporate those elements into just sort of fun experience videos now.
One of the things that I like about YouTube is that it is in some ways a very freeing space. You have a lot of freedom to do the things that you want and tell the stories that you want to tell. But you've had the opportunity to work with some pretty well-known brands. You had an award-winning commercial with Tommy Hilfiger. You were part of their adaptive clothing campaign. You've done a lot of work with Apple, like recognizable brands. And when you're working with these brands, I am assuming you're representing the disability community to them. But I wonder about what kind of feelings that brings up for you. Is there some amount of pressure that comes along with, I've got to do this right? Or, how do you balance the needs of a corporate entity and what their goals are for a particular campaign or product with the need to advocate for a community that it has for a long time been extremely marginalized?
I don't know if I've really told this story before, and I feel like it's been a few years now, and I think enough time has passed, and I've no like ill will towards anyone who I worked with on that campaign. It was all wonderful people who were collectively trying to just make the best thing for our community and for the brand, and we showed up to Cannes and we got some great recognition and awards. We made two versions of that commercial. Obviously, when I'm hired as a director, and that was through a production company that was hired by the agency, and the agency is hired by the client. So this is the Hilfiger commercial, and the agency has their own idea, collaborating with their client on what they want this commercial to look like. It was very tongue in cheek, very like you could maybe tread. It was maybe inspiration. Corn, I'll say, just because I know these platforms can censor sometimes, but what I mean is it was very, very tongue in cheek, and they brought me in because they wanted a perspective that was fresh and someone who could represent the disability community. And there was like talks of like hiring non-disabled actors to play maybe some of the roles if they were just better, in terms of the audition or what they liked or the look that they're going for. I ensured we only casted and auditioned people with disabilities because those were the roles of people in the clothing and the audience that this was all for. And I want to make sure there was audio descriptions and there was closed captioning embedded into the video that's going to be for commercial wide consumption. But there was also two versions of the commercial. One that was kind of scripted and to the point, but at the end of us filming, spending the several hours to just film all the parts that the agency wanted, I ensured that I talked to my my cast, the people who I brought in, and I wanted to get more authentic reactions to the clothes and to the message, and I just had these more casual, almost interview conversations with them, and we kept the cameras rolling, and it was only that footage that made, we had some B-roll and stuff obviously on top, but it was only those lines. Nothing was scripted. So that's how that commercial came to be, because once we did an A/B testing with the client chose my version over the agency's. And I think the agency liked what I did too, but they wanted to play it safe. That's their job. They don't want to lose a client. But I was like, you know what? You hired an unknown director who came from YouTube, who was legally blind. You took a risk already, and I'm going to take another risk. And it paid off, I think.
Yeah, what's life without a few risks? You've mentioned a couple of times your passion for directing, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about what turned you on to directing, and how do you actually translate your vision when you're working with a cast and crew? And sometimes they're people with disabilities, but I'm assuming a lot of the time it's not people with disabilities, but people who are, how does this actually work when you're on a screen filming a a show or a film or, a commercial or something? How do things actually work on the ground for you?
Yeah, I always have great support when it comes to these bigger productions or bigger projects. But if it is something that's smaller, say for instance, we did a 10-episode documentary travel series where not only did I co-write, co-produce, but I was also directing it and I was hosting it, and I was also this like on-screen third camera person. Um, and this was like, think the way the setup was sort of like Catfish, MTV's Catfish, while also being kind of that bubbly, almost airheaded host, who going into topics where like, I know I'm here to learn and be a window for the audience. I don't know much about bioengineering, but let's go to one of the like ETH, one of the greatest science and tech schools in Switzerland, where Albert Einstein went to school, and I want to learn what they're doing there and what impact they're having. So I kind of take this approach that like Zac Efron had in Down to Earth, while also maintaining this sort of like very YouTube-esque premium kind of style with vlogging. And that was just sort of this combination of things. And that was all like my conscious direction choice. I wanted to ensure, just as much as we had a camera crew filming me like a fly on the wall, and slowly kind of acknowledging the camera person throughout the series and like bringing them in. Eventually they get to do an experience with me at a blind museum in the dark. So you get to hear like my cameramen's like reactions and them going through an experience called at the Dialogue Museum in Germany. But this was all like me directing episode to episode, what I want us to reveal. And I wanted at least like 40% to be my vlogging camera. And it pretty much was. It was definitely a great payoff, I think. And you don't see much like it on like streaming or TV.
No, you don't, actually. Now that I think about it, that's very innovative. You have, it sounds like, no end of good ideas and so much passion for the work that you do. What are you planning to work on in the not too distant future? Do you have any upcoming projects coming up that you want to tease for us?
Sure. Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned before, I'm making a little bit more of a return to YouTube and short form content, which has been very fulfilling. I am slowly kind of coming at it where I posted a video where I went to Japan. I climbed the tallest mountain in Japan, Mount Fuji, in the off season. So it was like snowing, and I'm a climber or more of a hiker. I'm not like the most avid climber, especially like where I live around Philadelphia. There aren't as many mountains, not in LA anymore, but I wanted to do this because it was just a more of a childhood dream to climb this mountain because I like gaming sometimes, and Pokemon's one of those games that has
I was about to say Pokemon, right?
Yeah, Pokemon has like real world geography in it, and turned to like a fantasy modern day. And so I played through the Generation 2 Gold and Silver games from the Game Boy while going to the same real world locations in Japan. And the final dungeon was the final mount, like the tallest mountain in Japan. And I did the final battle on the mountain where I only had like 30 minutes before sunset would like make it so it's hard to descend. So, and great video, fun video to make. And then I did one where I wanted to know what it was like to be a blind person going into the metaverse and into the VR chat. And my idea was to just make friends and find people who would be accommodating in a very inaccessible game. Could I find people who could help, walk me through it and like tell me where the menus are? And I unexpectedly found a person who was really cool, and we had a great time. And it's a fun video, probably one of my best edited videos of all time. And she tells me like what this whole place means. So I'm trying to like, why are people wearing a headset and walking around like anime characters or funny, goofy cartoons? And I'm just trying to make a sense of it. And then I meet someone who during the pandemic was sort of stuck at home, and this became like her outlet to hang out with her friends and get out there and socialize still. And ultimately she wanted to go to this like museum. So I meet up with my new friend. Literally like next day I fly out to Ohio to like meet her. and I take her to this museum that none of her friends really felt compelled to go to. And it looks just like Tron or like VR-esque. It looks like the real like VR worlds and world. So you kind of see this like parallel of like us walking through 3D worlds in the game versus 3D in, like looking worlds in that change from room to room. And then there's like a weird time jump 4 months later where I go back to visit her and then we start dating. And she's now, as of today, actually, is our 1 year anniversary. Yeah. So that video came out last February, but it's been a wild year.
That sounds so amazing. James, I'm looking at the clock and unfortunately our time is up, but thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
There goes blind filmmaker James Rath, and you can always check him out on YouTube. Some really interesting content there. I definitely fell down a bit of a rabbit hole myself and was up very late last night watching James's YouTube videos, and I'm sure you will also lose a great deal of sleep over it, and it's a good way to spend a Sunday night. If you have any feedback or comments about this show, you can write us at feedback@ami.ca. Thanks for those of you who have been sending emails. Sorry, I'm a little backed up on responding to emails. I will write you back and say hello, promise. I see all your emails. I have not forgotten. You're also welcome to give us a call at 1-866-509-4545. That's 1-866-509-4545. And please remember to leave permission for us to play the audio on the program. You're also welcome to find us on X, formerly Twitter, at AMI Audio. Use the hashtag PulseAMI. You can also find me on X at Joeita Gupta. And if you are watching us on YouTube or listening to the podcasts, please don't forget to subscribe so you can be notified about future episodes, and do comment down below. I've been getting a ton of comments on YouTube, which I love. And I'm sorry, I'm a little backed up on responding to those as well, but I am getting through all of them a little bit at a time. But it's been great to hear all your amazing feedback about the show, and keep it coming, especially if you have ideas about future content or guests or topics you want us to talk about. Don't be shy. Drop me a line in any of the ways that I've described, and I would love to hear from you. Jordan Steves has been our production assistant today. Mark Aflalo is our technical producer. Ryan Delahanty is the coordinator for AMI Audio Podcasts. Andy Frank is the manager for AMI Audio. And I've been your host, Joeita Gupta. Thanks so much for listening.